or Jalagaya.
Official figures show crime has fallen to its lowest level for more than 30 years, and that's despite the cuts. David Cameron says police forces have done their best at a difficult time, but there's a warning over future cuts.
There's some real risks, to our frontline resources if we have to save by taking away from the frontline going forward for the future.
We'll be asking why people still think crime is going up, also tonight. 30 years in jail for the man who started a fire, killing 3 generations of one family. More areas of England are put under a level 3 heatwave alert, and there could be higher temperatures to come. And England's cricketers get a royal seal of approval. The Queen makes her traditional visit to Lord's for the Ashes Test.
On BBC London, no more than a 4-hour wait to see your GP, the promise from health chiefs to help busy hospitals. And demonstrations as the Mayor gets the final say on whether 10 fire stations will close.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC's News at 6. Official figures show that overall crime in England and Wales has fallen to its lowest level since 1981, and that's despite cuts to police budgets. There were falls in almost every category of crime except fraud and sexual offences reported to the police. David Cameron welcomed the latest figures, saying police forces were doing more for less. But there was a warning from the police watchdog which said any further cuts would jeopardise community policing. Our home editor Mark Easton reports.
The Prime Minister was keen to be out in the sunshine, hailing the good news of falling crime today. Figures for England and Wales at their lowest since records began in the early 80s. With police forces experiencing budget cuts, Mr Cameron concluded chief constables have proved they can do more with less.
The police and, frankly, the government get the blame when crime goes up, so I do think it's worth thanking the police and recognising the work they do when we see recorded crime and the crime survey come down.
Overall crime is down 9% in a year, down 55% since the peak in 1995. The number of crimes recorded by police also down 7% in a year and 38% lower than just a decade ago. One of the few crimes where police records show an increase is rape, 29% up in 5 years, a sign that victims are more confident about coming forward. The good news on crime comes as the Inspectorate of Constabulary says victim satisfaction is up, with police forces rising to the challenge of smaller budgets. However, they warn some forces, like Lincolnshire and Bedfordshire, will struggle to cope with further cuts.
They're talking about the next period, which is 2016 onwards, when there's some real risks, to our frontline resources if we have to save by taking away from the frontline going forward for the future.
The Labour Party has warned police services may already be being hollowed out, with some rank-and-file officers echoing the concern.
We're seeing that police officers are being drafted away from neighbourhood policing to deal with the frontline response policing because there are simply fewer officers on the streets. We've seen 15,000 officers since 2010 being taken off the streets. That's the equivalent of 2 forces the size of Greater Manchester. That can't be good for policing, it can't be good for the communities we serve.
But how strong a link is there between police numbers and crime? Over the last 30 years or so, the number of full-time officer posts has risen from 110,000 to a peak of 142,000 and has since fallen to 129,000. During the same period, crime rose to a peak in 1995 and then fell by more than a half. Put the two trend lines together, and there's no obvious correlation.
Could it be actually that Britain is just becoming a nicer place, a more civilised place?
Well, I would certainly hope that's the case. I think the effort that's put into education, the effort that's put into building communities, the stress we should put on knitting together and building a stronger society, all that is important.
You came to power claiming Britain was broken. It wasn't broken, was it? Actually, it was getting better.
Well, what I always said, there are parts of our society that are badly fractured and some that are even broken, and we need to mend those. And actually what's happened, if you look at the figures, philanthropic giving is up, volunteering is up, the number of social enterprises, charities, voluntary bodies is up. All those elements of the big society I've spoken about, they are strengthening.
The Prime Minister may be basking in the good news on crime today, but he also knows a great many voters simply refuse to believe the statistics. The challenge for him and for the police is to continue making savings while maintaining public confidence.
And Mark is with me now. Mark, there was plenty of evidence there in your report that crime is falling, and yet when you talk to people, many people say, well, crime's getting worse.
Most people do think crime is rising, but interesting point, they think crime is rising nationally. You ask them about their local area, and they'll often say, oh, it's not quite so bad here. In fact, things are getting a bit better. But you're right, most people do think crime is still going up. Why? Well, I think it's partly politicians. I mean, obviously, opposition politicians are always out to emphasise the bad news, and people tend not to trust government ministers that much. It's also, I think, about us and the rest of the media. I mean, I think, newspapers and broadcasters know that crime sells, particularly stories of violent crime. And I think that we have to remember, actually, crime has fallen substantially, and it's still falling. And it's really worth reminding people, that in the last, that right now, your chances of being a victim of crime are lower than they've been for at least 30 years.
Mark, thank you. Thank you. A man's been jailed for a minimum of 30 years for murdering 3 generations of a family by setting fire to their home last year. Police described Carl Mills as controlling and jealous of his partner, 17-year-old Kayleigh Buckley, who was in the house at Cwmbran in South Wales. Our Wales correspondent, Howell Griffith, has more.
A close, loving family. Mother and daughter Kim and Kayleigh Buckley died in the house they shared. Hours earlier, they'd brought home baby Kimberly. Born prematurely, she'd spent the first 6 months of her life in hospital. All 3 became trapped by a fire as it spread from the front porch to the bedrooms upstairs. Today, 28-year-old Carl Mills was found guilty of starting the blaze, knowing it would kill his girlfriend and child. Members of the Buckley family cried in court as the verdicts were read out. They feel Mills's punishment can never match the loss of the 3 they called the Special Ks.
Our life sentence started on the 18th of September last year, when 3 beautiful innocent people were torn from our lives. Our lives are never going to be the same again, but we ask to be left in peace to come to terms with our losses.
Carl Mills met Kayleigh online when she was just 15. She fell pregnant with twins, but lost one of her daughters at birth. The surviving baby Kimberly was deaf and blind and needed oxygen cylinders to breathe. This police reconstruction shows how they fueled the flames in the house as they spread. The fire damage to the Buckley's home was so severe it had to be demolished. But officers managed to recover Kayleigh's burnt mobile phone. It contained a stream of abusive text messages and threats sent to her by Carl Mills. One message read, "Your house is going up in flames." Another, "I'm going on a murder mission. I don't care if I get locked up." The police say he was trying to manipulate his young girlfriend.
Carl Mills on the night of the murders was incredibly controlling, even at a distance from Kayleigh, in the manner in which he was communicating with her.
Carl Mills yawned in court as his sentence was handed down. He'll spend a minimum of 30 years in jail. Howell Griffith, BBC News, Cwmbran.
The heatwave alert has been extended to 2 more regions in England. The South West and the West Midlands have now been issued a level 3 warning by the Met Office, joining the South East and London. That alert means healthcare services have to help those in high-risk groups. And forecasters say this July could be the driest on record. Let's go live now to Chew Valley in North Somerset and join John Kay. John.
Yeah, George, this was one of the hottest places in the UK today. 30 degrees Celsius, pretty much from first thing. And this part of the southwest is now part of that wider heatwave warning zone that includes 30 million people. Pretty much half the UK's population are in it. I'll explain what it means in a minute, but the authorities are having to deal with the impact of all this weather, like the people who look after this reservoir. They've got enough water for now, but what'll happen if this hot, dry weather continues?
It looks like a heath fire.
Britain is burning. There have been more than 1,000 fires just around London in the last few days. Fire brigades called for reinforcements this afternoon to tackle this one in Surrey. With temperatures still rising, some parts of the UK have seen a significant increase in ambulance call-outs. Postman Graham Bennett collapsed and died on his round in Lincolnshire. The coroner will now try to establish if heat exhaustion was to blame.
Those most at risk are the very young, the elderly and those with chronic illness. Those people who are seriously unwell. But equally we're all at risk if we don't look after ourselves. It's really important that we take care during this period of great heat.
There's now a level 3 heat warning for many parts of England. So patients here at North Middlesex Hospital are getting lollies and ice cream along with their medicine to keep them cool and hydrated. But how does the warning system work? Well, the Met Office measures the range of temperatures for all the regions in England, and normal summer conditions are classed as level 1. It goes up to level 2 when there's a 60% chance that temperatures will reach the heatwave threshold for 2 days in a row. Today, though, the Met Office raised its warning for the West Midlands and the South West to level 3, joining London and the South East, because temperatures there are expected to stay at heatwave levels till at least the weekend. Level 4 would be classified as a national emergency. Forecasters don't expect that to happen. But why is it so hot?
You may have heard us talk about the jet stream, which over the last few summers has been well to the south of the UK, allowing cool, wet weather to come in from the Atlantic. But this summer, completely different. It's now well to the north of the jet stream. That has allowed the heat to build.
Suddenly, our green and pleasant land is looking rather brown and dry. Reservoir levels are holding up, but customers are being told to show restraint.
Obviously we want people to go and have fun in the sun and to keep their gardens looking nice, and we don't have a problem with that. We've got plenty of water at the moment. We'd just like people to think sensibly and not waste water.
So no hosepipe bans for now. But with the hot temperatures set to continue, these people in Belfast and right across the UK are being urged to take care. Another warning this evening from the Coast Guard, who had to rescue a man who was trying to sail an inflatable dinghy from Dorset on the south coast of England all the way to Ireland. He didn't get very far, but the Coast Guard said that's reckless in any weather, let alone in this heat. George.
All right, John, thanks very much. Thank you. The Ministry of Justice has confirmed that police are investigating an assault on Michael Adebolajo, one of the men accused of the murder of Fusilier Lee Rigby. The incident is thought to have happened yesterday at Belmarsh Top Security Jail in southeast London. It's believed that Adebolajo has lost his 2 front teeth and is undergoing medical treatment. A 22-year-old man, Ashley Foster, has been convicted of the manslaughter of a church organist, Alan Greaves, who was battered to death on his way to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. Mrs. Greaves, who attended every day of the trial, said her husband was a man driven by love and compassion. Our correspondent Ed Thomas was at Sheffield Crown Court.
They were happiest together, helping others. This was Alan Greaves and his wife Maureen, both devout Christians. But last Christmas Eve, Alan was beaten to death in a motiveless attack as he walked to church to play the organ at midnight mass. His killers, Jonathan Bowling and Ashley Foster, were caught that night on CCTV, searching for a victim. Bowling admitted murder and Foster was today found guilty of manslaughter. But despite this, Alan Greaves' widow talked of forgiveness outside court.
My prayer is that Jonathan Bowling and Ashley Foster will come to understand and experience the love and kindness of the God who made them in his own image, and that God's great mercy will inspire both of them to true repentance.
Jonathan Bowling here on the left and Ashley Foster were said to be like brothers, and they'd spent Christmas Eve drinking lager and Bacardi and Coke. What happened here was without warning and completely unprovoked. Foster and Bowling ran towards Alan Greaves and they used a pickaxe handle in an assault that lasted for minutes. After the attack, both men were heard laughing in a nearby park.
In this case, there was no motive. We haven't established a motive throughout the trial, and I don't think there was a motive other than that Alan Greaves was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Alan Greaves' life was in total contrast to his senseless death. His killers will be sentenced tomorrow. Ed Thomas, BBC News, Sheffield.
And the time is very nearly 6:15. Our top story this evening. Official figures show crime has fallen to its lowest level for more than 30 years, but there's a warning over future cuts. And coming up, it was once known as the ugliest building in Europe, but could Sheffield's Park Hill estate be about to claim one of architecture's top prizes?
Later on BBC London, the ambulance service prepare for their busiest weekend of the year as the heatwave takes its toll. And buried with full military honours in Italy, the RAF crew shot down almost 70 years ago are finally laid to rest.
He's revered as the father of the nation, and today South Africa celebrated Nelson Mandela's 95th birthday. Though still critically ill in hospital, the former president's family said his health has dramatically improved. South Africans have been urged to spend 67 minutes of their day helping others. That's a minute for every year that Nelson Mandela dedicated to serving his people. 27 of those years were spent in jail. On a day of celebrations and commemorations, here's our Africa correspondent, Andrew Harding.
Birthday wishes for a remarkably resilient man. Every school in South Africa marking this occasion. Many here did not expect to be celebrating Nelson Mandela's 95th. Outside his hospital this morning, a special guard of honour as South Africa's president and the Mandela family went in to congratulate him. Mr. Mandela has been on life support, dangerously frail, for 6 weeks now. But sounding cheerful after seeing him today, his relatives told me he was improving.
Improving steadily. More than that, I won't say, but he is improving steadily.
He is a lot more alert and aware of what's happening. So, you know, the doctors felt that he could be able to watch TV and listen to music.
And he could sit up and he's aware?
Well, he's in his bed, sitting up in his bed.
And how soon before he might go home?
We have no idea.
But is that the plan?
Well, hopefully if he gets better, yes, of course.
The family were keen today to project a united image, helping out at this children's home. But they have been feuding publicly about Mr. Mandela's wealth and where he should be buried. Is there an awareness that the Mandela brand, if you like, has been damaged or could be damaged and that it mustn't be?
I really don't think so. The legacy is, still exists. The future is within how we promote that legacy, and we're going to continue to do so. And, I think that will never be threatened.
The news that Nelson Mandela's health is improving has prompted relief here, and something close to a frenzy of goodwill, with many people marking this birthday with acts of community service. So, puppet shows by the police, lunch for the elderly, Archbishop Desmond Tutu lending a hand, and a dream ride for a 3-year-old orphan, as a grateful nation honours Nelson Mandela once more. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Pretoria.
A radical overhaul of the way hospitals are assessed is being introduced in England. The new Chief Inspector of Hospitals, Professor Sir Mike Richards, says a team of doctors, nurses, patients and carers will carry out inspections, with hospitals being graded from inadequate to outstanding. Our health correspondent, Sophie Hutchinson, has more.
Salford Royal Hospital takes infection control very seriously and prides itself on its record for hygiene on the wards.
And you're feeling much better?
I'm feeling a lot better. It'll be one of the first NHS trusts to be assessed in a system which the new Chief Inspector of Hospitals claims has been radically overhauled.
What we're going to be doing is taking a whole look at the hospital. How well are they grappling with the issue of improving quality? Is this hospital safe? Is it effective? Is it providing compassionate care? Is it responsive to people's needs? And is it well led?
So how will the new inspection regime differ from the old? Inspections will be longer, with teams staying up to 5 days at NHS trust sites. Teams will be larger, from 5 per group to more than 20. And they'll include, for the first time, doctors and nurses, along with patients and carers, as part of a broader approach. The old inspection system has been heavily criticised for failing to highlight substandard care. Of 11 hospitals placed in special measures this week, only 2 had been given formal warnings.
I think in the past, inspections have been more of a tick box exercise. They've lacked the expertise, the real clout to get beneath the surface, to do a real reality check on how hospitals are performing.
Back in Salford, where they have an excellent record, the idea of tougher inspections is being welcomed.
I think the public want to have confidence in the National Health Service, and they rightly should have. And I think these inspections are part of building that confidence and providing open information back to the public about the state of our hospitals in this country.
The new Chief Inspector admits it is a huge challenge, but it's hoped more accurate inspections will both root out poor care and more generally raise standards right across England's hospitals. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
The Queen has paid her traditional visit to Lord's for the start of the Ashes Test, meeting the English and Australian players before the match got underway. England elected to bat and had a difficult start at the crease, but have recovered their poise this afternoon. Our sports correspondent Joe Wilson reports from Lord's.
Members of the Marylebone Cricket Club get a seat at Lord's, but only if they can find one. First come, first served. First cue was here just after 3 a.m. Only one person could delay the start of play. The Queen gave equal time and respect to both teams. For Alistair Cook, that was as good as the morning got. England's captain made 12, trapped LBW by Shane Watson. Joe Root followed LBW too, confirmed despite a review. Kevin Peterson was in and out for 2. Another wicket for bowler Ryan Harris. Perhaps the Queen had come to see Peterson bat. Her role was now complete. And at the sweltering home of cricket, it looked like Australia belonged. Jonathan Trott could be playing at Buckingham Palace, he'd barely notice. In his own world of concentration, his 50 helped the recovery. He fell soon after. But Ian Bell, once mocked by Australia for his perceived meekness, again looked immovable past 50. With him, Johnny Bairstow battling the heat and the bowlers and soon losing. The dismissal could not have been clearer, except it wasn't. The bowler's front foot must be behind the line. It wasn't just a match-turning millimetre. No ball, Bairstow reprieved. And Ian Bell just looked better and better. His 3rd century in successive Ashes Test matches.
Well, a few English supporters starting to leave. I can tell you their good mood has been tempered somewhat in the last few minutes because both Ian Bell and Johnny Bairstow have fallen to the part-time spin of Steve Smith. Still, I suppose, George, 283 for 6 sounds a lot better than 28 for 3.
Joe, thanks very much. It's been a tough start for some of the top British names on the golf course as the Open got underway this morning at Muirfield. Even the favourite Tiger Woods had a difficult start. Our sports correspondent Andy Swiss is there. Andy.
Yes, George, after all the controversy over the men-only membership here at Muirfield, the golf has now taken centre stage. Now, it looks beautiful here, but all this dry weather has made the ground very hard and very fast, and it's made for a challenging and intriguing first day. Sunny skies and a cooling breeze at Muirfield. A perfect place to watch golf, a slightly trickier one to play it. The undergrowth soon claimed its first victim, a TV camera.
Broke the lens. What about that? That's a first.
Repair bill to Thomas Bjorn. But others had more serious struggles, notably Rory McIlroy. His dismal year continued with one of the worst rounds of the day, 8 over, his hopes heading backwards. It wasn't much better for another home favourite, US Open champion Justin Rose's round, scuttling off into the vegetation. Others, though, showed the way, not least Phil Mickelson. A fine start for him, and an even better one for this man, fellow American Zach Johnson. On greens more like glass, he set the pace. As ever, though, most eyes were on Tiger Woods. First round, first hole, first drama.
Nothing calm about that.
Not quite part of the plan, perhaps. He's still out on the course. But for proof of what's possible, ask 56-year-old Mark O'Meara, one of the rounds of the day, and proof that experience here could come in very handy. Andy Swiss, BBC News, Muirfield.
It's one of the most prestigious awards in architecture, and today the shortlist for the Stirling Prize was announced. The list of 6 buildings ranges from a new chapel in Oxfordshire to a house built within a derelict 12th century manor. But one of the more controversial on the list is a once dilapidated Sheffield housing estate, from where our arts correspondent David Sillito reports.
The colours are bright, the concrete scrubbed clean of years of neglect. What was once a semi-derelict wasteland is being reborn.
What were your thoughts about Park Hill before?
A dump.
I think the red should have been where the mustard was.
I think they should have knocked it down, to be honest.
And as long as people are happy, that's all that matters.
And when it was built, the people did love Park Hill with its concrete streets in the sky.
It's like being in heaven up here.
40 years on, new residents such as James and Emma are rediscovering those feelings.
Is it beautiful?
To me, yes. I think it's slick, it's simple.
It's fabulous.
And one word explains why this building means so much to Sheffield: size. It is, as you can see, absolutely huge. It dominates the skyline, and for too long it's been seen by many people as a blot on the landscape.
It's part of the identity of Sheffield. It's an experiment into housing that did work until it became less and less invested in, and we care about it.
In 8 years, it's gone from being a candidate for demolition to appearing on a shortlist alongside an Oxfordshire chapel, the Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre, houses in Harlow, a medical school, and a remodelled 12th century manor. And so a rediscovery of the pleasures and possibilities of streets in the sky. In September, it could be Building of the Year. David Sillito, BBC News, Sheffield.
Time for the weather now with Nick Miller. Hello.
George, not quite 30 Celsius in London today, but it was hotter elsewhere. Looks like the hot spot was Bournemouth, but 13. Plymouth, Cardiff and Manchester, and a hotter day across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. As we heard earlier in the programme, the area is covered by level 3 heatwave health warnings, expanded to cover southwest England, parts of the Midlands, but the heat is widespread across the UK. And for more about the heatwave and how to stay safe, go to BBC Weather online. We've seen the odd shower and thunderstorm pop up in eastern Scotland, South Wales and southwest England. They're going to die away, and aside from some drizzle heading into the Outer Hebrides, it's a dry night to come. Patchy mist and fog, and it will be cooler than this in more rural spots. Open up the windows, let that fresher air in, but then again you let the pollen in, and that's still high to very high across much of the UK. Tomorrow, any early mist and fog soon clears, and then it's all about the sunshine and soaring temperatures yet again. Tomorrow, it'll be a hotter day in northwest Scotland, could see 27, 28 degrees. Some cloud around some of the coasts in the north, maybe a cloudy start at Muirfield, but then it brightens up. And a hot day in Northern Ireland, especially the further west you are. And as for the eastern side of England, you may see a bit of patchy cloud. That's more of an issue, I think, going into the weekend. Maybe a late day thunderstorm in northwest England, most dry across a large part of England and Wales, high 20s to near 30. Maybe a degree cooler in southeast England, but plenty of sunshine at the Ashes. A refreshing easterly wind, but that for the weekend drags in a lot of low cloud from the North Sea across eastern areas to start Saturday, burning back to the east coast, and then elsewhere lots of sunshine. Sunday, very similar. As a result, a range of temperatures could well be hottest across parts of Northern Ireland and western Scotland over the weekend. If you've got the cloud near that east coast, though, high teens rather than 20s. Next week, the curse of British summers, increasing humidity, even warmer nights. George.
All right, Nick, thanks very much. And a reminder of our main story. Official figures show crime has fallen to its lowest level for more than 30 years, but there's a warning over future cuts. That's all from the BBC's News at 6, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we can now join the BBC's news teams